profession of internal audit plays a pivotal role in managing this uncertainty at this times of ever-changing dynamics. Considering this, the Institute of Internal Auditors, Calcutta chapter, decided that we should also have a webinar on the impact of COVID-19 with a special emphasis on how is it going to impact our profession, that is the profession of internal audit. And we thought that we should have a luminary to enlighten us on this. So we zeroed in on none other than Sri Shailesh Haribhakti sir. With this, may I request the IT Committee Chairman of our India Calcutta chapter, Mr. Sanjeev Sanghi, to kindly introduce our faculty for the day. Shailesh Haribhakti.
Thank you so much, President. It's my honor to introduce my mentor, CA Shailesh Haribhakti. He's a career chartered accountant and cost accountant and a certified internal auditor, financial planner and fraud examiner. His career spans over 4 decades. He is currently chairman of Shailesh Haribhakti and Associates Chartered Accountants, and is currently the non-executive chairman of L&T Finance Holdings Limited, L&T Mutual Fund, Future Lifestyle Fashions, NSDL, E-Governance Infrastructure, and Blue Star Limited. He had been in the past been the chairman of United Way of India, NPS Trust, WIRC of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and Financial Planning and Standard Boards. He was also the past president of Indian Merchant Chambers, Rotary Club of Mumbai, Institute of Internal Auditors, Bombay Chapter, and Bombay Management Association. Very recently, he got a Distinguished Fellowship of Award, Distinguished Leadership Fellowship of IOD Award 2009, presented by Institute of Directors, and adjudged as the Best Non-Executive Independent Director 2007. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. You'll be happy to know that we currently have over 300 delegates right now who is listening to you, and I'll request the President to take it forward.
Thank you, Sanjeev. So, friends, could we have anybody better than him to analyze the impact of COVID-19 on internal audit today? A person who's non-executive chairman of so many companies, who's in the board and the chairman of audit committees of so many key listed companies of the country, a very, very revered professional. I'm sure he will be enthralling us throughout the next 1.5 hours. We would start off with Sir giving an analysis of what's going to happen in the coming years. Maybe we will go for a few years, how the business is going to change, and as a consequence of it, how is the profession of internal audit going to change, how the risk mitigating efforts are going to change. This is how we're going to start off. With this, may I request, and I must also convey to you, sir, that in addition to around 325 people who are here, I'm sure within a few minutes we'll cross. There are hundreds of people who are watching you live on YouTube, too, sir. With this, may I request Shailesh Haribhakti, sir, to kindly start his deliberation. So, please.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be on this wonderful webinar. It is a subject of my great love and passion. And so I'm particularly happy that both the Institute of Internal Auditors Incorporated in India and the Calcutta chapter are coming set of people from all over the country. Let me begin by saying a very humble namaste to everybody. I think our greeting has gained global recognition, and therefore we should make it a point to use it whenever we can. In fact, in many ways, India has shown global leadership as we battle this absolutely astonishing scourge that has affected almost every human being. Let me start by carving the journey of the internal audit profession. As you might know, I qualified as a certified internal auditor way back in 1979. I was the first Indian to actually pass the examination, all 4 sections. And therefore, I'm a very early member of the Institute with a full examination qualification. So I'm very pleased to participate with this particular profession, to share with you how our profession evolved, where are we going, and what is it that we can make as a contribution. So the evolution of internal audit began as a first-line defense. The first thing that internal auditors took up was really being part of the internal check system, where there was one more verification of the authenticity of a transaction. A large portion of the time and effort of internal audit went into transaction testing. Then we moved very quickly into systems and process documentation and evaluation through flowcharts and other means, the impact of the documented systems on the transactions that were output. And so we created that correlation between the fact that systems and processes can stabilize an operation, and that the transactions that come out of a stable system would be kind of homogeneous. And therefore, we were able to test using statistical means a few samples and reach conclusions about a population. So that was the second big phase, step up in the evolution of the profession. Then we went online. And not only did we discover that we can audit transactions that happen online, but that we can ourselves adopt and use tools which would facilitate that. And therefore, we went into a whole lot of analytics, a whole lot of scenario planning, a whole lot of tests that were automated. And then we built up a library of what are the best practices that can inform and improve continually the internal audit process. From this phase, we leapt into becoming advisors and innovators alongside the entire organization. So we found very often that the chief internal auditor or the partners of the firms that were involved in internal audit got deeply involved in transforming, stabilizing, ensuring that systems, processes, and governance ideas got deeply rooted. And finally, in the last few years, we have become innovators, where we are part and parcel of the entire process of digitalizing, making sure that everything that is physical transforms to digital platforms. So where is the next leap and where will it take us? We are poised to become challengers of the status quo in every aspect of an organization, in every phase of a business, in every transformation that will take place, in every challenge that emerges. We will not only be a participant because we have the knowledge and we have the backdrop, but we will become the challengers and the people who will demonstrate that if people come together, if collaboration happens, if work is done in an organized, systematic manner, we can actually challenge and overcome a situation. And that is precisely the big opportunity that a amazing global challenge of the kind that COVID-19 poses comes as perhaps the biggest challenge for internal audit. And let us see how we can meet it. But before we come to demonstrating how we will meet this challenge, and I'm going to take the illustration from 7 of the boards that I sit on. One is a set of service and IT companies. The other is a set of manufacturing companies. And one is from a social impact organization. So we will cover a whole spectrum of actual examples. But let me create the context in which we will be doing all our disruption, all our challenging, all our innovation. So the biggest thing that we will be doing is we'll be going much deeper into the understanding of the business models. And we will be entitled and empowered to do this because the reporting relationship of the internal audit today is way up there. Direct reporting to the board through its audit committee. And it is amazing that in many circumstances where a major issue is being debated, the internal auditor is also called into the boardroom to make a presentation. That is the place where we can really start getting a full appreciation of the business model. Next vector that we need to look at is challenging the sustainability of business models. Now, already there are only 2 types of organizations. One, those are getting disrupted, and the other who are actually doing the disrupting. And therefore, it becomes absolutely important for a crucial function like internal auditing to make sure that they identify what is the true status in each company and make sure that the surprise element is removed, because we are ourselves challenging the sustainability of the business model. Not because, and from what point of view? Not because we are seeing it getting destroyed, but because we want to make sure that we cross the horizon and go to the next step. And that is a unique position that the internal audit function can today fulfill. Third vector is to deeply understand cyber risk and cyber challenges which are arising because almost every organization is getting fully driven by what we now know as the internet. Today, without the collaborative framework and the infrastructure of the internet, almost nothing is possible. The very fact that 300-400 of us are communicating with each other, are being able to listen to each other in a facile way, is because we have this internet, which is bringing all of us together. And therefore, to understand the challenge of cybersecurity and cyber risk has become a great vector along which internal audit should evolve. Critical has become the challenge of understanding what exponential technologies are, how are they converging, and how are they actually going to begin to influence the companies and organizations that we are part of the internal audit process. And it doesn't matter which part of the process we are at. We might be in governance roles, we might be in the audit role, we might be in the system setup role, in the cybersecurity role. It doesn't matter where we are. The important thing is that we need to understand deeply and clearly what are the emerging technologies which are going to engulf, because of their convergence, the way that our businesses will work. And I'm going to talk a lot about this framework of exponential technologies which are today converging at a rate and bringing the future forward at an extremely rapid pace. What this does is brings us to the fifth big vector, which is the fact that internal audit can now never be qualified by that term internal, because anything that is viewed only from an internal viewpoint will be limited. We have to have an outside in, an inside out holistic perspective, because only with that perspective can we borrow from the knowledge that is happening and changing continually, which is the outside world, where all the benchmarks and the manner in which things are happening globally, the way things will emerge and evolve, all of that is coming to us at a pace that was never before as rapid as it is today. So we have to get familiar with concepts like data lakes, accessing benchmarks, making sure that all the opportunities for machine learning and deployment of artificial intelligence are actually captured by us, because we understand best this outside in and inside out correlation or perspective. That has become a very key vector for the evolution of internal audit. Now let's move to what are the changes that COVID will deliver. And there are 11 distinct changes, which I will talk about very rapidly, which COVID-19 will deliver, which will create the new world in which we will have to exist using all the 5 vectors which I talked about and moving into the evolutionary phase that I had described earlier. So what are the 11 things? The first and biggest thing that I see happening and emerging is that all of us will converge to a clean environment. Nobody will be wanting to accept or tolerate the levels of pollution, the levels of destruction of our environment that we had been practicing hitherto. And so that will change, and it will change dramatically. I would like to place that as the top of the 11 changes that will happen. Second, we will have high-speed internet. We are not far from the 5G world. 5G is mandatory if we have to bring in and embrace all the technologies that we are talking about. Connected closely with 5G is what we call the quantum internet. You know, the power that is possessed by the highest complex supercomputers will be far surpassed by many degrees, because we will now be able to use qubits, and we will be able to use quantum internet in a way that will change our atmosphere and change the way we work, change everything we do, governance and all the other processes that we are engaged in, almost unrecognizably. And that is the biggest delivery that will happen post-COVID, because that is the way the world is evolving, and there's nothing that can stop it. Trust is going to be at a huge premium. If we cannot trust systems, and we cannot trust people, and we cannot trust the entire way in which interfaces are happening, we'll simply not be able to go and perform our roles. So trust is very important. The tolerance to violence of any kind is going to get reduced immensely. We have already seen the way the entire world is changing in terms of much lesser instances of crime, much lesser instances of violence on the road, in society, and therefore a complete transformation as we get this chance to reset our minds. Next, learning and leisure will combine in a way that has never happened before. In fact, if you look at it, the quantum jump in television viewing, in Netflix viewing, in the viewing of streaming content, and the new knowledge that people have begun to acquire because they have the time. They're reading more books, they're looking at more videos, they're attending more webinars. There's so much of content which is coming. And therefore, learning and entertainment are fusing in a way that will transform the way that we will live our lives post-COVID. The understanding of the self, the engagement with yourself, with your internal strengths, has grown immensely and will continue to grow. Technology, as I said, is going to become exponential, it's going to converge, it's going to change everything. The whole idea of giving is becoming far superior. Just imagine what has happened. Within the first few weeks of the launch of the PM Cares, the quantum of money that flowed into the just the heart of corporate India, just the heart of people from all over the world. And even the individual high net worth donations that we are seeing coming through for feeding, for livelihood, for PPEs, for masks, for all of that is exceptional. So that is a big new thing that is happening. The entire emphasis on getting one, the oneness of systems, the holistic nature that we are looking for is getting established. Safety is becoming a huge, huge desire. We want to feel safe. The three biggest emotions that have emerged as a result of COVID are people want everything to be simple, they want it to be safe, and they want it to be trustworthy. And any business that can capture these three big emotions that are now emerging are going to be the winners of tomorrow. And I can tell you that every business can capture these three emotions. And therefore, it's important for us to keep this context when we go out to do the next few things that we wish to do. So, what does it bring about? It brings about the ability to collaborate, the tools to collaborate, the software to collaborate, the hardware to collaborate. It brings to fore the coming together of our entire profession. It enables us to feel confident of being able to work from home or work from any place on earth, wherever we are, whether we are on an airplane or we are in any place on earth that we need to go for a visit. We know that we can be as productive and as effective as we are from the safety and comfort of our own offices or our own homes. So the entire idea of hyper delocalization, physical presence becoming irrelevant, is gaining huge traction. Forced digitalization, we've already talked about it. The world cannot deal with anything which is not digital. So the world will break up into two kinds of organizations. Just as we had the disruptor and the disrupted, we will have businesses which are fully digital and those which want to become fully digital. They will have to have one foot in the physical world because there is some amount of manufacturing which will have to happen in a physical space. But that will keep truncating. That will keep getting localized. That will keep getting more efficient. but we will see this amazing duality emerge, completely new, fascinating duality, fully digital organizations and organizations that are physical, are localized, but want to get fully digitized. And therefore, this convergence of technology will become the critical element which will drive the future. Very quickly now, let me deal with um, the three types of organizations that I believe we can use as our examples for crafting and creating the internal audit, the fresh new paradigm of internal audit where we are challenging things. But before I do that, let me tell you the four major converging exponential technologies which will straddle all of these businesses. The first one is virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. What this will enable us to do is to do simulations, to feel that we are present wherever we need to be, and get a sense that we are in charge and empowered by what we see, by the entire set of faculties that we have: sight, hearing, smelling, speaking, all of that. And most importantly, feeling and having that intuition. That is going to be enhanced significantly by the establishment of VR, AR, and MR. Second is the quantum internet, which I just described in terms of qubits. The power of the new internet, the speeds of interaction, the downloads, the ability to be autonomous will have a quantum leap, and that is going to be the big change. And then to fuse our learning and our entertainment, we will have a whole new breakout of e-learning, brain-computer interface, wearables. So we will have maybe one chip which will be embedded somewhere in our shoulder or somewhere, which will capture all our vital information, which will become our communicator with the outside world, which will absorb at very high speeds and at very high storage volumes the data that is coming in from outside, combine it with our intelligence and thinking, apply our extended intelligence, and make sure that we can do our work far more powerfully than ever before. And the fourth one is going to be personalization. Everything will get completely personalized. The idea will be that you should be able to do everything on a scale of one, which is unique, as demanded, as conceptualized. And that it will become the distinguishing feature of the future. Everyone will demand complete personalization. So let's take a manufacturing organization of the future. And I'm going to build on my experiences in cement, pharmaceuticals, and engineering to speak about this aspect, which will constitute still a very significant proportion of the businesses of the world. So what will we see there? We will see a complete switch from subtractive manufacturing to additive manufacturing, from design which is done in shops which are specialized. So today, as we know, a lot of textile designing happens in Italy. But what will happen is that generative design will take the place of localized designing in specialist shops. What augmented manufacturing does is through 3D printing, it takes materials, and today there are 1,000 materials which can be utilized for the purpose of establishing augmented manufacturing. So instead of taking a piece of steel or aluminum and banging it, shaping it, cutting it, chipping the corners, shaping it, putting it into a tool, putting it into a particular jig, and then working on it, and then putting it together through a whole lot of coupling. All of those processes will give way to making sure that from a designed mold, you will actually create and shape the part that you wish to see through the use of 3D printing, AI, and machine learning all combined together to make sure that manufacturing happens without waste. Just imagine what would happen if the entire spare part inventory that we are holding today as a whole globe would be eliminated, because we have these small 3D printing machines which will create the part that we need right now, right there. So you just don't need to store them. The time that it takes to get hold of a broken or a missing part today is so incredibly high that you simply cannot tolerate the delays that take place inevitably to source it. So therefore, the internal auditor will have to refocus entire attention on making sure that these elements of waste and these elements of enabling technology are all put together, fused together to reach what is called manufacturing 4.0. What will also be required to be audited is how much of the movement of materials and the movement of everything else within the factory is automated. So autonomous vehicles, single person driven, very large warehouses, where at a dashboard level, the entire scope of manufacturing and of warehousing and supply of required parts on time will happen. The entire thought of extraordinary service, which has to accompany all manufacturing, the installation of the product, the making sure that there is no defect. The question of there being 99% good and only 1% rejects will never arise, because quality will have to be such that there is no defect and no return and no waste and no inventory. And that is the holy grail that internal audit will need to chase. The webcam is using a. I'm just going to switch to a bit of a manual mode. Am I equally well audible? Okay. So that is the big change that will. One second. I just make sure that my power doesn't run out. Okay, now we are all set. So that's the manufacturing scenario, completely transformed. And look at the power, the contribution that the internal auditor can make in such a paradigm. Now let's move to a service organization. And I'm going to build on my experience in retail and at NSDL e-governance, which deals with very large governmental systems. So what are the key elements that we look for in NSDL e-governance and future lifestyle? Very large data systems have to be accessed and kept in complete order in order to make sure that a flawless service is actually rendered. Therefore, it is critically important that machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain ideas, big data analytics, all of that gets integrated into the way we conduct our internal audits and we conduct the way that we do things. So that is all brought to the fore, if you like, before a specialist
risk management committee, where every meeting there is a huge long presentation on cybersecurity. We are obsessive about cybersecurity. We are obsessive about online reputation management. And all of this is done through the internal audit kind of process. We are tracking for our online reputation what people are talking about us. What is it that is being said on the internet? How does it make a difference to our operation? How can we enhance our service standards? What is it that we can do to make the customer more satisfied? All of this becomes critically important. Fault intolerant customer service. Nothing can be allowed to go wrong in extremely large, very visible, very demanding business processes. And finally, let me describe my experiences with not-for-profits. And as was said in my introduction, I happen to serve on Give India. At one time, I used to be chairman of United Way, and I've been the president of my Rotary. So there's a whole lot of non-governmental and NGO kind of work that many of us are called upon to audit. So what are the key things that are important? Big ticket items will be privacy. How do we handle data? How do we make sure that details that we have and possess and carry about people that we render service to is kept private? Cybersecurity, very critical. How do we make sure that the systems and the analytics and the compliance, and here we need to comply with 3 different processes. Need to comply with the dictates of the board, which is governing us. We need to make sure that we are in compliance with the regulation and the law. And we need to be sure that we are in compliance with the mandates that our donors are giving us. And there we need to make sure that speed and efficiency of delivery of the final output, the quality of the output that we procure and actually disperse and put into place in our beneficiaries, all has to be of very high quality. The last mile, which has to be the final touch between the person who is delivering the benefit and the recipient of the benefit, has to be so extraordinarily good, because that's the experience which brings back the next donation and helps to carry on the cycle. So if I were to draw a line through all of this and pull out the 5 or 6 things which are critically important, they would be the use and deployment of technology, the complete consciousness about cybersecurity, the collaboration, the holistic approach, the inside out, outside in approach, a multidisciplinary approach, and openness to learning from the outside, to continually improve, to be very conscientious about being on the path and making sure that the path keeps improving and leading towards extraordinary service at all times. And that continuous learning and continuous improvement and enjoying what you're doing, that, friends, is the biggest delivery of a well-conducted, post-COVID, ultra-modern internal audit process. And I would like to end by exhorting all of you to go into the depths of your own organization, go into the depths of your own self, and bring out all of these aspects that we talked about, which will help you to conduct the best internal audit you've ever done. My wish is that every internal audit you conduct is better than the one that you last did, because there is no limit to the extent to which we can keep improving. And beyond everything, I exhort all of you to stay home, stay safe, stay creative, stay digital. All the very best. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you very, very much. So without wasting time, we'll go into the questions and answers. Before I look into the questions put in by the attendees, I'll start off with a question. Sir, in March 20, in many industries, the physical verification of stocks have not been possible. And there are large organizations, especially in energy sector, say, I'll name the largest energy sector companies of the country have not done any physical verification. So both as an internal auditor and as an external auditor, what would be your guidance?
Fantastic question, very relevant to today. So it's very important to become independent of that year-end physical audit of the inventory. It becomes absolutely critical to do a continuous physical to book audit. Now, I had it somewhere in my notes, but I didn't pick it up. But today, every organization must have an ability to remotely access and see what is happening in every location that it is operating in. Whether it's a factory or a warehouse or a place where some service is being rendered, wherever. And it's important to capture and document it so that when a situation of this kind arises, it is easy for us as an organization and as auditors to roll forward. So we'll have to roll forward from the last physical take. Let's say it happened in Feb, or it happened, let us say, in December. Roll it forward to March in an efficient, effective way because we have set up all these processes. Or we work back from whichever day the lockout or the lockdown opens up and work back towards 31st March. So either way, it becomes important to reorient our systems to make sure that we have this continuous ability to track and monitor what is happening to the operation, to the inventories, to the people, to the workspaces, and all of the aspects which I talked about, the 11 things that I talked about, all must be tested.
Thank you, sir. But in very large organizations, if the lockdown is not withdrawn in, say, maybe in a couple of months, would rolling back be that easy?
It is okay. So that's the other thing. We need to think about trust, and we need to think about forbearance. And both of these are two sides of the same coin. The government and all our regulatory processes have shown remarkable forbearance. We now need to bring back and make sure that nobody takes disadvantage of this unfortunate situation and reports wrongly because it might not get discovered. So this is where the trust element comes in. And I would say that that is what is going to get built as we go forward. But you're right, it does open up that arbitrage opportunity to change the outcomes to your own advantage. But let's hope that we as a profession and the external auditing profession working together will work to mitigate those kind of arbitrages.
Okay, sir. Now let us take the questions from the people who are attending. The first one that I'm picking randomly. Thanks, sir. That's insightful. Considering the business needs emerging out of COVID, what's your view, whether it's time that internal audit need to cross boundaries of 3LOD and need to work closely with the management to support the on a real-time basis than doing post-mortem later, causing delayed assurance? Thanks, Mohit Gupta.
Absolutely. What a wonderful question. No auditing which is done on a post-factor basis is going to feel satisfactory. Auditing has to become an integral part of the control mechanism. It has to get fused. I would go to the extent of suggesting that both the internal and the external audit in terms of coming in, quickly looking at how you can slice through the cutoffs and slice out of the cutoffs, and internal audit on a continuous fused basis, work together to keep the systems fully working, fully secure at all times. So this is a critical new way of doing audit. It's already happening. I'm saying it is going to get far more pronounced as we go forward. It's a great question and something that I think about all the time.
Next one, sir. Sir, how do you see the performance of locational audits, site visit audits, factory visit audits being affected due to the prolonged impact of pandemic? What can be the ways of alternate methods to effectively close these types of assignments with agility assurance to management?
I understand the drift of the question. So until we get to a full-scale virtual reality establishment, and until we get to 5G, and I give this 3 years time, 3 years into the future, we will not be asking this question, because how we conduct the audit, where we conduct it from, will all become irrelevant. Because the virtual reality of the site will be available to you sitting right here on your desk where you and me are interfacing. But until that time arises, the value of site audits and the value of being in touch with the physical space, the interactions of people, judging the way that people interact with each other at the site level, whether it looks like they have a clean, honest environment which they've built up and which they are willing to protect and they're willing to propagate, becomes critically important for any audit process to deliver. So therefore, extremely well planned. And you cannot go to a site without having a very clear, detailed, specific plan on what you will do, when you will do, whose help you'll need, what data will need to be kept ready. Make sure that your site visits are productive and very, very valuable to everybody at the site. So today, the challenge is to make those site visits far more productive. Tomorrow, the site visits can be combined with the VR, AR infrastructure that every major organization will need to set.
Okay, sir, next one. What can internal auditor do to audit evolving cyber and data security risks?
Well, it would take another 45 minutes to go over all of the things that a cyber auditor should do. But let me give you some very basic 10 or 15 points that you might want to pick up. Start with a full evaluation of what is documented by way of policy, process, behavior norms. Go deeply into how you evolve the SOC controls. What is it that you're feeding into your SOC? What is it that you're getting out? What are the near misses that you are seeing? What are the attempts that you are seeing in terms of direction of that attempt, location of that attempt? Is there a lot of attempt of trying to breach your firewalls from outside the country? Is there a particular geography? Is there a particular strengthening that you need to do in your firewall? Is there an extra precaution that you need to put in? Is your software which prevents the viruses from coming in absolutely up to date and effective? Whenever a cyber event happens, are you documenting the learning? Are you making sure that the patches that you actually put and the corrections that you did get reflected throughout the organization? Are you making sure that you will share it with those who can make a difference to the control environment? Are you tracking it, monitoring it, diagramming it? Are you making sure that the slightest variations in system effectiveness get communicated to the highest level? Are you making sure that enough resources are available to correct them, to track them, and to make sure that the system never fails? These are all obligations which will become mandatory to make sure that the heightened cybersecurity environment is created.
Okay, sir, I'll pick the next one fast. This is a more of a statutory audit question, so I'll skip it for the time being. If we have time, we'll take it later. Just a second, sir. Since manufacturing sector and process industry primarily in MSME sector, this had other part of the question, just a minute, sir. Okay, primarily MSME sector, which is the backbone of the economy, has to depend on labor and manpower. I don't know what, I mean, I am sure that the gentleman has missed some part of it. Or is it a two-part question? I don't know. This is not a complete question, sir. We'll have to skip it.
Okay.
Okay, while there will be recognition of revenue, however, in my opinion, there will be an impact on cash flow.
Yeah, sure. Of course, no question about it. Cash is king in today's time, no question about it.
These are smart questions, basically. I think it was a part of the earlier question. If we link it with that, since manufacturing sector and process industry primarily is in MSME. Anyways, so you have already answered it. I'll go to the next one. As a member of audit committee, what are the expectations during this lockdown period and post-lockdown? It's a personal question to you, sir.
So, as a member of an audit committee, the biggest thing that I get worried about is the complete freedom to the audit process to actually perform its role. There's a very big disturbance around. Is it better now? Hello? Okay. So I'm saying the biggest thing that as an audit committee member I look out for is the body language of the internal auditor. I'm always searching for some sign that the auditor wants to convey something more to me. And if I find that, I go deep into it. I have a special offline meeting. I give them complete access to me to make sure that nothing that they have in their mind gets left behind, and that everything that needs to be brought out is actually brought out. That, to my mind, is the most crucial part of the interface between an internal auditor and an audit committee. The building of that trust, the building of that dependency in a way that the organization's interest is never sacrificed. Yeah.
So your voice was muted, President. Now you can speak.
Okay. What are the implications for tire industry which needs to be kept in mind while conducting internal audit? Industry-specific questions, sir. Tire industry.
In the tire industry. Okay, interesting. But so I will give you a generic sense. It's a process industry where basically what you're doing is you're buying raw material in bulk. So therefore, the critical thing there is that buying process has to be automated, has to be put into some procurement software. You need to make sure that every purchase in a particular time frame is compared with every other purchase. You must know a very acute awareness of what other people are buying the same product from the same source at the same time. So all of this becomes critical in a tire company. Moving forward from the procurement, the input-output ratios and the manufacturing efficiency is going to be determined purely by the quantum of waste that you are generating. And that has to be tracked over long, long periods of time. Again, I would want to see the internal auditor putting in a machine learning AI kind of overlay on the accurate measurement of the inputs and outputs. Moving then into the distribution, there is a whole lot of thoughts that would surround the way the relationship with the distributors is set up, the kind of commissioning arrangements, the discounting arrangements, the effectiveness, the customer feedback, the reputation of every dealer, the tracking of the financial capability of the dealer. All of that becomes a very valuable process. And then, of course, you would have the human resource process, which has to be, again, fully automated through the audit, applying all the technologies that we talked about. It has to be technology driven. It has to be oriented to making sure that the input-output ratios remain stable and you are in a position to deliver the best value. That is the best I can say for the tire industry, but that would apply in almost every manufacturing or process industry.
Thank you, sir. Next one is a pretty longest question. I'll pick it up because this is from a famous internal audit firm. Due to changes in internal audit plan and backloading of various divisions and functions to be audited arising out of lockdown, the overall effectiveness of internal audit may be reduced in entities requiring physical presence. The statutory auditors may raise qualifications that internal audit was ineffective vis-a-vis the entity. The qualification of statutory auditor may be serious if there is a fraud event as well. How internal auditors should prevent this and tackle with this?
3 ways. One is bring the discussion to the forum of the audit. Very important. Bring the discussion to the forum where internal and statutory auditors should naturally be interacting with the presence of the CFO or the person in an organization who is responsible for the entire audit process. And 3, make sure that you prepare the defense of your organization in terms of what are the other systems, processes, guardrails, risk management processes that have happened throughout the year. Because ultimately, no interaction with an external auditor happens only once a year. It happens on a continuous basis, at least 4 times a year. So the way the earlier interactions had happened and what was found at the interim level will become a very important determinant of how we can take this matter forward. But ultimately, if there is an attack, that will have to be defended. And that documentation is important.
So the next one, in the opinion of the guest, in his opinion, the impact of COVID-19 has left the global economy devastated. Though some of the industries could weather this assault, but most of the MSME sector would not be able to revive themselves. If the lockdown is not removed, which is going to be very sad. Your comments and role of internal audit under the current scenario besides the future of internal auditors?
Well, I mean, the lockdown is already relaxed somewhat. For example, we just read the statement of Reliance saying that all the manufacturing facilities were operating through the entire period. I can share with you that we are very confident that we'll reopen some of our spaces in the manufacturing companies and in the retail companies that I'm responsible for, which I'm a director in. So there is no question of the lockdown being permanent or it being extended in a manner that will completely devastate the business. Of course, it will create massive immediate problems. But that is where the challenge will have to be met through very careful planning, very strong measures for cash conservation, excellent planning for financing, making a plan A, B, C, and D, making sure that you are ready to face whatever challenge comes up. That is where the contribution of the internal auditors will now become very, very relevant to make sure that input is given to all of these issues.
So next one is a query.
I may run out of power in the next few minutes. So what I will do is I'll switch to my other device. So there might be a 1 minute interval in between.
Not an issue, sir. We are waiting, please.
No. Okay, so should I do it right now? Let me do that.
Yeah, that would be better.
I'll get on to my other device.
In the meanwhile, I'll request the queries to kindly raise the query in one message.
Hello, can you now hear me?
It in a couple of messages, please.
Hello?
Okay, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
We can hear you, sir, but we can't see you yet.
Oh, that's surprising.
The video.
Let me rejoin. Can you now see me and hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Well, I don't know why I'm not able to.
Sir, there is an option for
Then, the right-hand corner, sir. The video,
the right hand.
on the video option is there.
Because this is a cell phone, you will not be able to see my video in a go-to meeting. So you'll have to work with just the audio.
Oh,
Unfortunate, but we'll have to work with the audio. So you can ask the question and I'll reply. You can assume that Sanjeev is answering just to see the video.
okay, sir. So the question is, okay, it's a compliment, question, comment, I believe. Anyway, my compliments to you for a well-articulated and thoughtful comprehension of the situation post-COVID. However, I differ from you on the wishful thinking as India has a huge labor force. They are gainfully utilized. Your comments, please, Mr. Rajiv Arora.
Yeah. So this question comes at me extremely frequently. And I think we need to get ready for a comprehensive reorientation of our skills. That has now become completely essential. Nobody is in the business of creating new jobs. India has already got 80-85% people working as entrepreneurs. The number of people receiving a wage or a salary is extremely small compared to the total number of people who are actually earning income. And that is why we are seeing this massive problem when the daily wage earners and the disruption has happened to people who are every day getting a wage. But that
is something that we will not be able to change. In fact, we will have to learn to make sure that more entrepreneurs and more enterprises can live and work and interface in a digital world. In order to assuage the problems of the people who will simply not find the work, what we will need to do is to focus on what I like to call universal basic services and universal basic income. India is perhaps the ideal spot where we need to focus completely all resources on universal basic income and universal basic services. What that will do is it will make sure that the friction that is caused by the movement of people between various activities will be protected by that universal basic income. And the universal basic service will enable everybody to have access to housing, to education, and to food. So if food, housing, and education are taken care of as basic services, and there's a basic income which is available on tap as people stop earning what they are normally earning as an entrepreneur or as a daily wage worker, that should take care of the overall economic framework. And we need to start thinking about this, work on it. And I know that every move that is happening in our country at a central level, at the state level, is working towards providing these universal basic services. And the Manrega and programs like that are going to support the universal basic income. So we have to accept that reality and move forward with confidence by doing e-learning, by doing all of that change of skills and all of that.
Sir, if I can add and ask you another connected question, would we see that in our lifetime?
Absolutely. I see that in 3 years' time. No question. The way that this is accelerating, it's absolutely amazing. I'm very confident, very, very confident.
Sir, you are a die-hard optimist for sure. So the next question is to this. We can relate it. Do you see reduction in internal audit staff for cost cutting?
Not at all.
Okay. Sir, just a little, add on to the last question. Sir, we are seeing that even the IMABCL graduates are getting kicked out. The fresh graduates who were offered the jobs, and now the corporates are saying that they are not going to hire them. And with the green card, except the green card, other people are perhaps not going to go back to states. If they are in states, they are going to come back when the US administration asks them to go back, and they are all going to come to India. With these Indians who were going abroad with jobs, they are being told that their jobs are not going to be there. What is going to happen to the fresh graduates who are going to face the competition from all those top graduates as well? The fresh graduates of the mediocre class, where would they get the jobs from?
So this is a very big short-term challenge that we will have to actually support. Everybody who can support a young person should attempt to do that. Anybody who is in a position to add one new job should do it. I think this is a matter that all of us as a community must come together for and must support this unfortunate situation where there's simply not enough resources available, or it's not seen to be available in the short run. And therefore it becomes incumbent upon those who can actually afford to do it to step out and do their part today. I'm sure that from this debris of jobs that are cancelled and proposals which are not honored, we will find some superstars coming our way. And therefore, I would encourage everybody listening to this to make sure that if you see a person in distress with a job offer cancelled and with nowhere to go, take them in, give them an experience that they will remember, and you will get a resource that you will find in the long run to be very valuable. So this is our time to step up.
Sir, a question by me. If India can actually tap this opportunity of, becoming the global supply chain link, do you foresee in the medium run a reverse brain drain?
Absolutely. I think it's going to happen. Whether I predict it or not, I think it is going to happen. Because just look at, as an example, the desire on the part of people who had left their homes in the past and come to the cities. The only thing they want to do is to go back to where they came from, feel more familiar, get into more familiar surroundings, get to their family, get into a community. So there are three pillars of society that I think I think in terms of how society has evolved. There's the government, there are markets, and there are communities. And we are talking about how the community pillar is going to take up the slack that the markets cannot afford to take up because of the unfortunate situation that we are facing today. Today, we are in such an unfortunate situation that we are simply not having any rotation in the markets. And that is why we are asking these questions. And these are real questions. These are questions that all of us face every day. Where it will inevitably happen that we will have to find a new normal around entrepreneurship. We will have to find a completely new way of dealing with and integrating people into our communities. And let us treat our internal audit practitioners and our profession as a community which does just that. Bring back the key resources, bring back the extraordinary people if they are not in a position to manage their lives wherever they are, a Dubai person or a Abu Dhabi or a Saudi or wherever else they are at. And make sure that you fuse them in your teams and make sure that your teams can get the benefit of their past experience.
So next one. Can you give some insight into how internal audit can support management in providing assurance on conversion of cash in a manufacturing company?
On conversion
of cash.
So let's take what creates cash. Today, what I've seen, again, based on the experience, cut off all costs to the core, which you can't afford and you can postpone, cut them off. That is absolutely mandatory. Whatever, and one has to become a bit ruthless in this particular time. Second, postpone capital expenditure to the extent that it is possible to postpone. Make sure that all excessive assets are sold, even if it may be at a loss. It is important today to get into that cash and make sure that the working capital cycle that will be required to recharge the business and make sure that it functions comes back into operation. So plus, draw down on every loan that you have outstanding. Make sure that you are in the markets for any kind of funding that is available. Make sure that you have the right relationship, access them. Make sure that you are in front of the bankers the NBFCs and wherever else that you can draw money from. It is very critical at this point in time that you not only save the outflow, but also increase the inflow. And that is how cash will be enhanced, and you will be in a position to be ready to jump onto the new cycle as soon as it arises. So that's the key way to do it. Many, many aspects of this are being practiced today at a vigorous pace because that's what is required.
So the next one. As an auditor, how do we ensure that organization does not enter into transaction which ends up in an aged debtor?
Sorry, that stands up in a?
Ends up in an aged debtor.
Oh, aged debtor. Oh, I see. Oh, very, very important, very interesting question. There is now a software service available which will enable you to have a picture of any counterparty, the financial footprint picture of any counterparty that you want to deal with. And there are 5 or 6 organizations which are offering this as a service. That if you, let us say, I want to get into a transaction with Mr. Patwa, then I need to know, based on Mr. Patwa's current updated status of how many places there is a suit going on, whether Mr. Patwa has been timely in terms of payment of various obligations in the past, up to date on taxes, up to date on GST, up to date on statutory payments and all of that. Make sure that any red flag in Mr. Patwa's organization, I'm aware of. Auditor has left, directors have changed, any big mishap has happened, in the regulators have started filing or investigation or whatever. This all information is now available in a granular manner about almost every counterparty that you may want to start work with. And it's very important that wherever possible, people take access to this service and make sure that you don't begin to deal with people who are bound to give you an aged debtor in the future. So you have to treat the problem when it is at a seed stage. You cannot allow the problem to fester. You cannot give the credit and then wonder how to collect it. You have to make sure that you deal with people who are reliable. Equally, the people who are wanting to be the counterparties will have to behave themselves, because all of this is being tracked automatically without their knowing it. It is absolutely important that every one of us realizes that our financial footprint is being tracked. And therefore, it's very easy. If you all set your mind to meeting all your obligations on time, all your footprint will be wonderful, and we'll have a far better business relationship between debtors and creditors. That, to my mind, is again the evolving new future that is coming. All lending by bankers and NBFCs will be based on this kind of assessment. Why do you now get offers from so many places that, oh, we have already pre-selected you for a 35 lakh loan or a 50 lakh loan or a 5 lakh loan or whatever, or that we want to give you this credit card, because they know your financial footprint. So be aware that this is now available extensively. And if you, prevention is far better than cure. That's the big message.
Thank you, sir. So the next one, okay, this is a very holistic question. How to check for the going concern assumption considering COVID-19?
Great question. Absolutely great question. Surprisingly, the answer is very simple. It is a matter of judgment. And when you are in a responsible position where society has put you in charge of making a judgment, You make it in a responsible way. You make it in a way that you are not putting the cart before the horse. You don't operate as a you can't make a person behave or operate as a non-functioning or dead entity and think that they will be able to survive. And you can't push people into the precipice of going under. So this is where the judgment which is being exercised by the auditor in this case will have to be done with a very strong and deep sense of responsibility, given the fact that yes, today there might be a scenario of gloom and doom, a scenario of uncertainty, but tomorrow there'll be another day and another time to fight. So this is very important to make sure. But when you're doing a valuation exercise, for example, the going concern question becomes very important. Then your entire base and metric of how you make your valuations will kind of change if you have even a heightened fear of somebody going under, in which case you will alter your models to make sure that the appropriate valuation is given to a business. So the two contexts are very different, an audit context and a valuation context.
So the next one. The query says you have been associated with cement a lot.
Yes.
And you are aware quite a few frauds do happen outside the gate controls or even outside the books of accounts. How do you propose role of internal auditor in such a scenario? Automation can be done within the premises, but outside gate controls is my concern.
Well, I think, as I mentioned in the main text of my speech, the inside out and the outside in collaboration that has become critical is what will enable you to take care of the outside gate controls. So you have to start thinking of your cement company not from an internal view, but from an ecosystem view. At ACC and Ambuja, for example, every driver who sits in a truck which is coming to any of our plants or warehouses or dealerships is considered a part of our ecosystem. So we imagine ourselves to be responsible for that person's safety, for that person coming on time. They have put themselves into the path of trackability. And so there is actual tracking happening through the journey at the gate, while they are inside the premises, while they reload, and while they go out. And so it becomes a partnering, it becomes an extended ecosystem. And that's how the control over the outside gate, as you call it, controls get exercised. And every now and then, a continuous physical monitoring of the inventories becomes a critical part of how you deal with this matter. I can now jump back into my original device. So I will join there because I think I will have enough time then.
Yes,
and then you can have a video. Okay. But while you can read out the next question in the meantime.
Okay. You can hear me, right, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So the next query is, please guide us some of the substitutes of surprise checks on cash and assets of other units from the registered office.
Of what union?
He is in the registered office. He wants to do surprise checks of cash. He used to do surprise check of cash and assets of other units.
Oh, I see.
He wants to substitute for it.
Okay. You see me and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay,
Oh, we
good.
can see you too. Great.
Yeah, so I just switched the device once more. All right, so cash checks from head office on a surprise basis. I'm I'm a very strong believer that you need to have the internal systems and processes tracked on a continuous basis. So that cash, which is a one-time picture, becomes just that. The consciousness has to be developed by continuous interaction between head office, between the registered office and the plants or whichever other locations that you are visiting. They must know that there is a zero tolerance to anything which will be found amiss. It is this aspect that will stop the controls from getting diluted. And this is what will also enhance the controls in a very significant way. So that when you actually then go on a surprise cash visit, you will find that people are not trying to hoodwink, they're not trying to displace the facts, but they will voluntarily and happily enable the cash to be counted in a proper way.
Okay, so next one. He says, thank you, sir, for your insights. My question is, considering last few weeks, are we as a profession, I'll reframe it, sir. As a profession, are we in a position to work remotely and perform digitized internal audit, at least in few sectors like IT and ITES? Please let us know your views.
Absolutely. I mean, I have not worked harder in my life than I worked during this lockdown. There's so much of webinaring, seminaring, work from home, board meetings, committee meetings. They're all going on continually. There's no halt. The only thing that halts is the extent of power that gets consumed and therefore the need to keep changing devices. But other than that, nothing else stops the working from home. Many organizations planned this even before the lockdowns happened. So they were able to take their main servers and place it in a way that it could enable the entire profession to operate from outside. So a large part of what was the basic core system was moved out before 15th March. So that when the lockdown happened on 24th, people were ready. And there was a seamless transition. So it is all a matter of anticipation and planning. It is very possible to work from home. And as I was talking about in my main address, it is critical that we learn these lessons and actually get to work from home. 75% of TCS is going to work from home in the next 3 years. How are they going to do it? 100% of all professional firms should be working from home. Auditing can certainly be done from home.
So the next query is, there are so many regulatory changes happening. What kind of controls internal auditors should look into?
So it's very critical to digitize regulatory compliance. Very critical. So you either go in for a standard service that is available from many sources today, or you create your own digitized version of all the laws and regulations that are applicable to you, digitize it, create a whole escalation mechanism so that the early warning signals, if a default is approaching, will be available to you upfront, and you will not allow a default to happen. Or you will take action before the default actually arises. So it is very critical to digitize all compliance, however small you may be. From 100 crore turnover upwards, every organization must digitize compliance. No choice left anymore.
Sir, the next one. What will be your top 5 expectations from internal auditor as chairman of audit committee in the current scenario, in current time?
Fantastic question. I love that question. My top expectation is that I want all internal auditors to be innovative. I want them to be tech enabled. I want them to present to me in terms of graphs, in terms of trends, in terms of scenarios, in terms of exceptions. I don't want routine reports. I'm not interested in anything that gives me long story with a long timeline for compliance. That's something that I'm intolerant to. I want the internal auditor to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I want the internal auditor to help me in making sure that every aspect that has been discovered in the past is actually taken care of. So I want the ATR to be updated at all times. Fourth, my expectation is that the internal auditor will be confident, will be brave, and will take on the right fight, because as an audit committee chairman, I will support a fair fight in all respects. And finally, I would like the internal auditor to be completely free to make his or her presentations without any fear or without any favor. And I think that is the critical thing that all internal auditors must have, that ability to speak out. Don't have any fears at all.
Excellent, sir. So the next one, what, sir, in your opinion, would be the impact on forensic audit and the manner in which it will be done?
Oh, forensic audits are becoming highly data-driven. You remember the service I talked to you a little earlier? That becomes critically important in the context of a forensic audit. Almost every legal firm is buying into this service because they want to know what is it that needs to be looked at as soon as a forensic mandate comes their way. Every accounting firm is also accessing this service. And this is going to be the data-led auditing. Because as I said, if you don't have knowledge of the external environment, broken down by domain, broken down by person, broken down by entity, how will you ever perform a proper audit by just looking at things inside a company? You don't know what is the price going on in the market for the same commodity at the same level of intensity outside the company. This doesn't work. And therefore, it's critically important to have access to external, properly collated, properly analyzed data. And every internal auditor must make it his or her business to make sure that this data is available from the external sources.
So the next one, what are the key challenges that internal auditors will face in the normal course of business post-COVID-19?
The big challenge will be that the operation which is getting back on its feet will have lesser bandwidth to actually operate in the normal way that they used to operate with the internal auditors. Therefore, the internal auditors will need to apply far more IT-enabled technology, non-contact with people, greater contact with the system, better analytics, better access and extraction of data without actually engaging the people who are the custodianship of data should be altered in a way that the access becomes easier, in a way that the analytics can be performed. That to me is going to be the biggest change in the initial phase. And then it will, over a period of time, settle down and get back to normal. Or a new normal will emerge, who knows?
So the next one, what are the immediate knowledge, according to you, that internal auditor need to gain on priority in the current business scenario?
So the 5 major converging technologies which I talked about, now is the time. Go out and get yourself fully educated on machine learning, artificial intelligence, brain-computer interface, e-learning, quantum internet. How do you work in a personalized environment? What is it that you need to know about augmented manufacturing, IoT, sensors? Get yourself educated now. Now is the time. Get hold of books, get hold of videos, get hold of material, subscribe to services, do whatever it takes. Now is the time to learn, sharpen your knowledge.
Sir, it's 5:35, so maybe we will end in next 5 minutes. A couple of
Yes.
more questions.
Otherwise, my
What are the
battery will
cyber-
again run out.
Sir, what are the cybersecurity risks and safeguards to be exercised in the in the work from home environment?
Very good question. Very good question. The biggest thing is access. And the biggest thing is to make sure that whatever has been accessed from the central database is tracked. So that data which is critical to an organization is not taken away during working from home and transmitted out. So the full trackability of the device that you are using in working from home must be in the hands of a central controller. And every activity should be tracked, every activity should be monitored to make sure that no misuse is happening given the slightly lesser supervision that can be exercised today. Because you don't have the physical controls. So you'll have to make sure that the system controls become stronger on access, on utilization, on transfer, on transmission, on all of those issues that we normally look for in the cyber audits.
Maybe, okay. Top areas and risks of internal audit plan 1920. That's the next question.
1920 to khatam ho gaya abhi. Now we must talk about 2021.
He perhaps is talking about the last quarter of 1920 for which he has to complete the audit or something.
Yeah, so
or maybe he's talking about 2021. It may be a typing error as well. Who knows? Mr. Sumit Bansal, if you can clarify.
So I'll cover both. So in the last quarter of 1920, the biggest critical thing will be cutoffs. And the biggest critical thing will be how have you planned for working from home? And whether the controls and security that we just discussed are actually being implemented. That, I would say, will be the top 2 or 3 points for the 1920 last quarter. For 2021, it will be the crystallization of the restarting plan, the safety of people, the health of people, the way that people will remain socially distanced when they come back to work. All of these will have to become subject matter. The OSHA audits will become the first quarter big challenges. The making sure that the health, safety, and the correct process being used becomes very important. Nobody should be allowed to come in without having downloaded and got cleared by Arogya Setu, for example. Many organizations are saying that once you open up, if you're not Arogya Setu cleared, you can't enter the workspace. Because that is the first indicator of the risk that you have of being a carrier. And then, of course, all the elements that we talked about in my main talk, the 11 new paradigms that will open up, the learning, the trust, the IT enablement, all of that is going to become a part of the 2021 audit process. It has to be completely revamped. If you find that 2021 is looking like a clone of 1920, go out and change your plan. That's the best hint that I can give you. Don't allow your 2021 be an extension or a slight modification of 1920. That is very critical. Get renewed, get more aggressive, get more innovative.
Thank you very much, sir. The Calcutta chapter would be indebted to you. I will request the Secretary of Calcutta chapter, Mr. Arijit Roy, to propose the formal vote of thanks. unmute Arijit.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes,
I've
right.
been muted by Sanjeev only. Okay. On behalf of IIE India Calcutta chapter, I take it as a privilege to extend my vote of thanks for such a splendid and fabulous webinar. Over the last few days, just like each one of us, I have also been attending a number of webinars. But, sir, it's my personal privilege, and I would say it's a proud moment for IA Calcutta chapter to hear you out. Especially, we are privileged that you are the first CIA of India, and to hear out the evolution, the context for internal audit that you set, the impacts of COVID-19, the paradigms and the industry specific experiences that were brought by you. It is simply unparalleled. And to be very frank with the group, when you were making a journey through the paradigm, it was feeling like I'm looking at a movie to the future, some science fiction. And that's the reality today. So apart from your professional knowledge, I am really touched by your profound thoughts, your optimism, and the human quality, the thrust that you have put in on the trust and the belief, the trust and collaboration, I would say. So as an internal auditor, as a hardcore internal auditor, I take the cue from your session, and all of us definitely in such a depressing environment, we are much more hopeful. And what you said is definitely makes sense. We internal auditors ourselves are standing at a juncture where we need to prove ourselves that we are collaborators with the organization we serve for. We are rather contributors, and we are in equal footage with all other peers. So with that, I would thank to our president, Ravi, Sanjeev, for arranging such a session in such a short notice, and all the participants for this event. Thanks. On behalf of IIA India Calcutta chapter, we are planning to come to you with a number of webinars. This is just a beginning. And with the doyen of our profession, Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, I said we have made a grand beginning, and more we will be coming back to you more from our end. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar.